Hello everyone, welcome back to some more of The Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. Last time, a great deal of things happened. As I seem to recall, let's see. We talked to the two witnesses, the DeRusso and DeRossi. We talked to them about what they saw. Apparently they took the inspector and essentially kidnapped him for a night and then basically let him out the next day. But as it turns out, wasn't exactly the inspector. However, it was someone with the inspector's identification card. His real identification card. So, you're probably wondering to yourself, well, who was it that did it? Who was it that took the inspector? Well, as you can see by the mark on his neck, if you saw last episode, it'd have to be Gossip, which, as it turns out, is actually Daily Vigil in disguise. As for why he's wearing a weird disguise like this, well, we're about to hear it. Let's see, what was my voice for him again? As you say, it was 10 years ago now that my employment at Barclay's chief warder came to an end. Okay, sorry about that, just that's something. Having left the prison service, I searched for some new occupation by which to earn a wage. But times were hard in London, and I found no suitable engagements at all. In desperation one day, I turned my hand at selling wares on Fresno Street. But your wife appears to know nothing of this. She still maintains that you are the chief warder at Barclay Prison. I was utterly determined that my wife should not know of my failings, which is why I'd never told her. I opened an account at the bank under the name of Hugh Boone, and I rented the cheapest room I could find on Fresno Street. The scene of the very crime we're investigating. Yes, that's right. A place from which I could emerge every morning at 8 and as a squalid peddler. I'd transform myself back into every evening at 5 into a well-dressed man about town before returning home. That quickly became my daily routine. Yeah? I was puzzled by the lack of furniture in the room. But that explains it. But why on earth didn't you just tell us this in the first place? I have a wife, sir, and 2 sons. And without wishing to sound self-conceited, they regard me with some pride. I couldn't bring myself to disappoint them. Then how are you still paying for everything? You have a wife, you have 2 kids, you and your wife look well off. So I'd imagine you're spending a lot of money on your wife and kids, and it's been 10 years, so I'm pretty sure any savings would have died out. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure begging wouldn't be worthwhile. So, instead, you decided to conceal your occupation from them. Yes. I've made such a terrible mess of everything. Still, one thing doesn't add up. No matter how many tidbits of information you could sell to passing gentlemen, even at 6p a price, you couldn't hope to match the salary you must have commanded as chief warder at the prison. Very true. To have kept your family in comfort despite 10 years of somewhat misbegotten employment. That was all thanks to Inspector Gregson. What? Inspector Gregson? What on earth? It was some years after I'd invented Boo and begun my other life as a street seller. He, the inspector, that is, recognized me one day. Do you mean to say the victim was an acquaintance of yours? I knew him from my time working at the prison. When he saw what I'd become, he was deeply troubled for me and my family. And from that day forward, he visited me on Fresno Street with increasing regularity. Then, one day, he asked me if I would carry out a secret assignment for him. A secret? What was it? I was to impersonate the inspector. What? Impersonate him? We always met in that little room so the inspector could brief me. Visit Oxy's tomorrow and take a statement from the proprietress. It was always something along those lines. Surveillance work, interviewing people. On those occasions, he would lend me his identification so people would believe who I was. My instructions were to make an impression, to let people know that Inspector Gregson had been at work. And for those services, he compensated me financially. Scotland Yard willingly relinquished his identification card into your care with intent to deceive? That, as I'm sure I need not point out, is a very serious criminal offense. But why? What was the point of you impersonating him? I truthfully do not know. All I can say is that the inspector warned me on numerous occasions. Now remember, Vigil, I need your solemn word. You don't blab about this to anyone, alright? Ever. Even if, well, if I end up a croaker. In time, he started to bring papers with him to the room as well. It became something of a second office for him. So, in fact, the person who declared himself to be Inspector Gregson at the park on Lime Street was... really? Yes, it was me, acting on the inspector's orders. As usual, I removed my boon disguise, and then went on as instructed to the park, armed with the inspector's identification book. It never occurred to me that the bruise on my neck might give me away. Well, it would seem this confession completely destroys the defense's case. Explain yourself, Prosecutor Osogi. My learned friend's assertion was as follows. The victim was killed at another location on the day before his corpse was discovered, at the hands of these two red-headed League men when they imprisoned the inspector. But no, that can't be. After all, it wasn't the inspector who went to the park that day. It was me. Oh, goodness! Finally, we have clarity. We had nothing to do with the murder of the inspector. And merci, Monsieur de la Défense, for proving it. Well... Order! Order! Indeed, it would appear that we have reached a de facto conclusion of sorts. These witnesses had no involvement in the murder of the victim. As proven somewhat ironically by the defense. I hereby call an end to the cross-examination.
Hold it!
What the... Yeah? Pardon me, my lord, but with your permission, I would like to pose one further question to the witness. Cosma? And what question is that, counsel? It concerns the events of 10 years ago. I believe you would have been present at a very significant execution that was carried out at the time. Oh, he's biting the Hydra's head right here. Wait, no, that's not the right phrase. He's... getting to the root. Ugh, whatever. 10 years ago, the execution of the Professor, Genshin Asogi. I want to know exactly what your involvement was. Oh. Answer me, man.
One moment, Counsel. Is this related to the current case?
Naturally. It is the prosecution's belief that this case and the events of 10 years ago are inextricably linked.
Does the defense concur, Counsel?
Kazuma, you're not yourself. You're not as calm and collected as usual. Oh, Kazuma-sama. No wonder he's acting this way. It is basically his father. Mr. Vigil's memories of 10 years ago, of what happened 10 years ago, will tell the tale of Genshin Asogi's lost moments. His own father. I know. I do understand that, but... Prosecutor Asogi, do you genuinely believe that this question requires an answer in order to learn the truth behind Inspector Gregson's death? I need you to trust me. Please. Very well. Then the defense has no objection.
I see. In that case, you will answer the question, witness.
The truth is, I remember very little of that time.
You've forgotten?
I'm sorry to say, yes. As I said, I resigned from my role at the prison 10 years ago. But, for some peculiar reason, my memory of the events leading up to that moment is extremely hazy. Does it not strike you as strange, Mr. Naruhodo? Sorry? Well, 10 years is a long time, but you have forgotten the reason why he left such an important job. Yes, you're right. And not only that, Mr. Vigil's claim contradicts what we already know.
The human spirit is a fragile thing. It's broken all too easily. Which is why we have a tendency to wrap it up for protection.
Sorry? The human spirit? I'm afraid I don't understand what you mean.
When we experience pain and suffering that we feel unable to bear, we block it out, obliterate it from our memories, seal it away. But it never truly leaves us. If the seal is broken, the memories resurface. And when they do, the fragile spirit that may finally be crushed.
But I really don't... Kazuma-sama.
But if it must be crushed, then so be it, because the truth will not stay buried. It's coming out, one way or another.
Right. Now I understand. It's clear what his intentions are. He means to expose the truth at any cost. Perhaps if I pointed out the contradiction in what Mr. Vigil claimed earlier, it might cause some crucial memories to return to him. But should I? Should I present the evidence or not? You know what? I'm gonna trust Kazuma this time. I have no idea how this is gonna go, but this is a court of law, and I have a duty to pursue the truth. Mr. Vigil, I'd like you to take a look at this. Let me see something before that. Oh, no, that sucks, okay. It would be nice if they put something under his neck. That would be a neat detail. Oh well. evidence that clearly contradicts your version of events. Namely, the dismissal notice. Rights to redundancy pay revoked. Aiding and abetting Ace escape. Jailbreak plot was conceived. Negotiation with prison staff.
Take that!
Just a few moments ago, you made the following statement. I resigned from my role at the prison 10 years ago. Ah, well, yes. In other words, you claim to have left the post Chief Warder of your own volition. Well, yes, of course. Why? Tell me. Do you remember seeing this document before? No. No, I don't. This is a dismissal notice ordering the immediate termination of a prison staff member's employment. A dismissal notice? And the name of the notice is yours, Mr. Vigil. What? What? It's mine?
So you didn't resign from the prison service at all? For some reason, you were dismissed as Chief Warder from Barclay.
No, there's been some mistake. I'm sure. I'm sure I tendered my resignation. This dismissal notice is nonsense. Isn't it?
If you were forcibly dismissed, there must have been a good reason. Clearly, you did something. Mr. Vigil, it's time to break the seal and have you remember. According to the few remaining records, the final execution that you supervised was on the 17th of June, 10 years ago. And on that day, something very serious took place at Barclay Prison.
The 17th of June. Was that the professor's execution? Professor?
As you were the Chief Warder at the time, it stands to reason that you would have been present throughout the proceedings.
It does sound familiar.
And yet, that execution never took place. The convict, ostensibly executed earlier that day, later emerged from his grave.
The convict came back to life? In the cemetery in the middle of the night, there was a witness. However, the witness claimed that a moment after he saw the convict clambering out of his grave, a gunshot rang out from over his shoulder, and the bullet pierced the professor's chest, killing him instantly. Those may have been the professor's actual last moments. Yes.
Seeing as you were in charge of overseeing executions at the time, you must know the truth about what really happened. It's in your head, somewhere deep down. Well, Chief Warder Daily Vigil, I know there are many memories in your head that can explain what happened on 17th of June 10 years ago. And now it's time for you to drag them up.
Mr. Vigil? Yes. The whole prison. It was complete chaos. The prisoner escaped. He was killed in the cemetery. The shocking news ripped through Barclay like a hurricane.
What? Order! Order! Do you mean to say, Mr. Vigil, that your memories of the time have returned?
My head, it's like some floodgates have been opened. The images, the screams. Oh my goodness. The papers. There were reports of articles about a man who'd seen a ghost. Yes, Enoch Drebber.
But surely those reports were exaggerated.
There were traces at the scene. Traces of what? In Laogate Cemetery, at plot number 139. Blood. Lots of blood. That's where the man was buried, of course. Obviously, something terrible had happened there.
The depths of conspiracy and depravity from which this tale is emerging are quite staggering.
I have reviewed the police records from that time extensively. A thorough investigation was conducted by Scotland Yard to ascertain how the convict managed to escape in the first place. And the conclusion reached by the investigation team was that a member of the prison staff must have been involved.
Are you suggesting that a prison warder abetted the man's bid for freedom?
Yes, and I was suspected of doing it. Of using that mass murderer's execution as a way to help him escape.
You did what?
I remember now, the horror of it all as all coming back to me. One evening, a few days after the execution, some detectives came to the prison. I was called to the governor's office at the top of the short tower.
Oh, cried the Scottish voice again.
I'm sorry, Daly. This is a serious business, but I cannot help you know. As chief warder, you were responsible for overseeing the execution of all, eh? Well, it seems the fellas at Scotland Yard want to have a few wee words with you about it. You'd better pack your things, laddie. You're to attend in person.
As soon as he told me that, my mind just went completely blank. And the next thing I knew, the professor, the most hated killer in our country's history. And I let him escape. I'm finished. My life is over.
Order! Order! Bailiff, fetch a doctor at once! Court is adjourned for today with immediate effect.
Yeah?
So, with Mr. Vigil's collapse,
Suddenly voice acting.
proceedings came to an abrupt end for the day. Once again overshadowed by the legacy of that notorious killer, appearing like a cursed ghost ship on a foggy ocean. Lord Van Zeeks, Mr. Vigil, Kazuma, and Gregson. All of them bound by invisible chains anchored to the same wreckage in the murky depths of the past. But the miraculous light that had been trying to cut through the gloom and shine on those tragic events was playing on the edges of the truth at last.
Well, that was something, wasn't it? So, we just made a man relive his attempted you-know-what.
Oh yeah, sorry if that scream wasn't as loud or sounded awful. It's like 10 o'clock at night. Most people in my house are asleep. Yeah, let's not wake them up. Anyways, 2nd of November, 3:38 p.m. Shelms' suite. I still can't quite believe what just happened. I know. I inquired with the bailiff after the court section was adjourned, and it seems Mr. Vigil was taken to hospital to recover. Right. 10 years ago now, Mr. Vigil attempted to commit suicide by jumping out of the window of the prison governor's office. But ever since then, he's completely blocked off the memory of those events from his mind. Nobody knew his secret. Not his family, not even the man himself. But I forced it out into the open. Was it wrong of me to do that? Did I overstep the mark, I wonder?
Bruno!
Oh, Iris.
You were miles away. Anyway, I brewed a fresh pot of soothing tea for you.
Oh, thank you.
You and Susie have had an exhausting day so far, haven't you?
Oh. Thank you, Iris. How thoughtful of you. Do you happen to know where Mr. Sholmes is? When we came out of the courtroom back into the defendant's antechamber, he'd disappeared.
Oh, no, I don't know. He just suddenly sprang to his feet and left. All he said was, I must leave.
I wonder if he's pursuing the mystery of Inspector Grigson's death.
Well, you know what Hurley's always saying, don't you? There are mysteries in the world that should perhaps never be solved. For the construction of a solution comes only at the expense of the destruction of something else.
What does that mean? Pretty sure it means what we just said.
He knows very well that when you open someone else's old wounds, you often open your own too. But he just can't take his own advice and leave well alone. Solving mysteries is too important to him.
That's so true.
But that's what I like about Hurley after all.
Suppose it's a lot of a great detective in some ways.
So then, let's have tea. And then I'll give you a hand.
Oh? Do you have time, Iris?
Yes, I finished this month's manuscript at last, with barely a day to spare before the deadline.
Oh, I'm so looking forward to it. A brand new story to read in the adventures of Sherlock Holmes.
You know, I always hide Hurley's violin in the days before I have a deadline.
You do? Poor Mr. Sholmes. I'm sure that's very wise, Iris. How sensible of you.
Now then, my dear fellows, let's make a plan of action before we continue our investigation.
Alright.
So, how did it go in court this morning?
Well, we still don't know the truth about what really happened, but one thing's increasingly clear. Lord Van Zeeks definitely didn't do it.
Oh, goody.
Yes, that's right. We've managed to uncover several new facts as well.
Oh, really?
And there was another development too. Cosma. Yes, it's quite clear now that Cosmo-sama is not himself. The way he's acting, it's almost as if he's possessed. I know. I mean, at the end of the proceedings earlier, he was like a bloodhound the way he was chasing down Mr. Vigil's forgotten past. He's not normally so mercilessly persistent.
What's going on in his head, I wonder? I really need to sit down with Cosmine, try to understand what he's going through. Well, this is basically the murder of his father we're talking about, so you can imagine anything we're basically even remotely related to. Sorry, it's just the... Yeah, just the microphone. Ugh, whatever. Anyways, yeah, you'd think he'd be worked up at anything even remotely related to the case, so... Oh wait, I literally just clicked this. Yeah, whatever, let's skip through this. Ugh. Let's see, what is the next thing we're talking about right now? 30 minutes already? Wow, we only got like 15 minutes left. Alright, I guess we'll finish off whatever we have to do here and continue anything later on. Alright then. Alright, next thing, the Reaper's innocence. If Gregson was really murdered the day before his body was discovered, the Lord of Zeeks has to be innocent, you see.
What? The day before? That should be easy enough to work out just by examining the corpse, surely?
Yes, you would expect so, but curiously, no time of death was included in the autopsy report.
Huh, that is curious.
There are still unanswered questions about Lord Van Zeeks, though, aren't there? Do you mean... I mean, what was he doing there on Fresno Street that day in the first place? Well, according to the man's testimony, he said he was investigating Inspector Gregson, didn't he? And it turns out that little room was actually the inspector's secret office.
Ooh, that sounds like it has all the makings of a wonderfully devilish plot.
But then, why was that notice board in there covered in all those particular papers? Papers about cases with a link to the Reaper. I'm starting to get a bad feeling about all this.
Oh dear, that sounds more like something horribly devilish.
We must start by looking into Inspector Gregson's movements of late.
His movements?
I never imagined I might be the one having to investigate an inspector's movements. Well, according to the entry in his diary, he was carrying out an incognito investigation of the Red-Headed League the day before his death.
Oh, you mean he was doing the same thing as Hurley?
Well, Mr. Sholmes was trying to apply, whereas the inspector was supposed to be investigating. I do wish it had been the other way around. Anyway, as it turns out, the inspector who went to investigate the Red-Headed League that day wasn't actually Gregson at all. It was Mr. Vigil, in possession of Gregson's identification.
You know what that sounds like to me? Establishing an alibi.
Oh my! Yes, you're absolutely right, Iris. But why would Gregson need an alibi? Because he's doing something illegal. Duh. It would appear that the inspector had something to do that he wished to keep secret.
I don't believe it. I always thought he was just a harmless lover of fish and chips.
But perhaps they were seasoned with something a little more potent than salt and vinegar. I think perhaps we should try to move away from food analogies. Well, anyway, if Lord Van Zeeks felt the need to investigate Gregson... Yes, I agree. We must try and find out what he knows.
Vigil, you say? Isn't that the name of the lady who came to visit Hurley yesterday?
That's right. To ask Mr. Sholmes if he would help her to find her missing husband. Only Mr. Sholmes completely passed the buck to us. Actually, didn't you say that Mr. Vigil had been taken to the hospital? Do you know which one?
Ah, it's St. Sinner's.
I'm starting to wonder if all the other hospitals in London have closed down.
But that's amazing, Bruno. You found the lady's husband already.
Well, I suppose I have. By accident.
And 10 years ago, while Mr. DeVigil was chief warder at the prison, he was responsible for overseeing the professor's incarceration. No! So, when the convict escaped...
So when the convict escaped, he was held responsible and immediately dismissed.
Sometimes I really don't want to grow up.
There's more. For 10 years after that, while he was ostensibly working as a peddler, he also had another secret job. He was paid by Gregson to be a stand-in to impersonate for the inspector.
To impersonate Gregsy? But why?
I have absolutely no idea.
Jeannie was right. I'm starting to think that all adults are up to no good now. Including you, Bruno.
I haven't paid anyone to impersonate me.
That means he has ties to the professor and to Inspector Gregson, though. So I do think we ought to pay a visit to Mr. Vigil, don't you?
Back to St. Sinner's then.
Well, I think it's clear what we need to do, isn't it? Let's investigate, my dear fellows. Oh, Iris, you're even more enthusiastic than usual today. If anyone has anything to hide, my special Wilson shooting iron will set them straight.
That water pistol?
It's stuffed full of a piping hot extra special blend of mine. And I'm quite sure it'll be very effective.
I'd better be careful not to hide anything.
Well, feels a little strange that Mr. Sholmes is nowhere to be seen, but still. Let's go see what we can find out.
Yes! Alright. I guess we have a myriad of places to go, don't we? There's the consultant. Well, no. There's the Chief Justice's office, the prison, prisoner room, and the hospital bed.
Huh. Okay.
Well, okay, so I just tell you what. We're near like the 40-minute mark, and I am basically out of energy at this point, so I guess we'll just look around this room for a little, see if we can find whatever stuff that's there, until like we hit 40 minutes. So yeah, we'll look for something. We'll look at a few things. What is there to look at actually? Oh, here's the viola. This is Mr. Sholmes' famous violin. The one he found being sold for a song at a pawnbrokery. What's it called again? Shoulder something? Oh, so that's a viola, not a violin. Oh, yes. This wonderful instrument features in the inventions of Herlock Sholmes. It's the world famous Stradivarius. What? Stradivarius, Mr. Naruto. Stragivor. Are you even trying now? We'll come back to this another time, I think. What is this? What is this thing up here? There's all sorts on these shelves. Chemistry apparatus, books, papers, and lots of things I've never seen before. It's all heaped up so high I can't help feeling that the whole lot's gonna topple at any moment. It looks as though it might topple, and yet it doesn't. The epitome of Mr. Sholmes' brilliance. I don't get it. As it happens, I'm quite well practiced when it comes to stacking shelves myself. Just the other day, the shelf in my office finally gave way under the strain, though. It looks as though it might topple, and it does. Yes, the epitome of your disarray. I really don't get it. Alright, well, I guess that's enough for now. So, next time, we are going to not look at the court record, we're going to I guess look at one of these few places. We have 4 places to go to. We have the Chief Justice's office, the prison, the street room, and the actual bed. So we might go and visit the hospital bed first, just because I kind of feel like that's more relevant now, but whatever. Anyways, thank you all for watching, and yeah, I will see you all. Make sure it saves good in the next video. So yeah, thanks for watching, everyone.